Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Wish you a happy and healthy start to this lovely little Sunday morning over here from a very much bright Helsinki, Finland. How do I know that? It's been bright since fucking 5 a.m. Absolutely hate it. Need some blackout curtains. And with that said, after we get through the weather TA, we'll get in some bullshit Bitcoin TA. How about that? No, actually, most importantly today, all clickbait titles aside, yes, you know, short-term, medium-term time frames are more or less sideways in a range. Yes, very cool, awesome, great. It's been the same thing for like the last week and a half. More importantly though, because it is a Sunday, I do want to focus on some long-term macro analysis here, because there are a couple of really interesting things going on with Bitcoin that suggest some pretty, how do we state this? Pretty interesting things coming up, probably in the not so distant future. So with that said, let's get into it right now, putting the focus on the Krown chain application, which can be found at app.krownchain.net. Before we actually get into this analysis, because it is actually the last day of our 3-year anniversary sale, I do want to spend a little bit more time on that. I don't want to show myself too hard here, obviously, but I do want to I do want to make sure that the people who actually are interested in this sort of content do know about this discount that's available to you. 20% is offered off of any one of the programs or any one of the indicators. At app.krownchain.net. Of course, the link's in the description below. Make sure to watch the videos that accompany them, because they're going to explain them in detail about who they're for, who they're not for, and you know what you can kind of expect with it. And more importantly, then you can decide for yourself, is this something that you know you should be getting involved with or not? Because most people probably shouldn't be getting involved with these things, because it's going to eat up your life in the same way that it's done mine. My hair is already turning gray, and I'm only in my early 30s, so there you go. Probably don't want that now, do you? Anyways, putting the focus back on the Krown chain application, which can be found at app.krownchain.net. We do see a few very interesting things right here, mostly with open interest. Open interest is still kind of holding steady around the just above $10.25 billion marker, of which within the context of the current range does still likely imply consolidation here. And with that in mind, consolidation within the context of an uptrend, still going to have a slightly bullish bias. However, again, because it is long-term analysis Sunday, there's going to be some big caveats with that. Anyways, on top of that, Bitcoin dominance and fear and greed index more or less steady here. Definitely need to check out the Bitcoin dominance today. Forgot to do that yesterday. So let's go into the market, or actually before we go into the market data tab, what do we have as far as the top 10 gainers, top 10 worst? Whoa, hey, what the fuck? XRP's on the top 10 best coins today. Perhaps worth checking out. Usually when XRP rallies though, that's usually going to be around the last leg of the overall market. Fair enough, but of course we actually want to see it in real time. So before further judging it, I do think that it is well, obviously it's very interesting over here, but most importantly, I'm seeing once again all of the 2017 shitcoins kind of rally here. I'm talking about well, maybe not Elrond, but Stellar, IOTA, Ravencoin, Theta, VeChain, XRP, iOS. These were all names that were very popular back in 2017, 2018, especially during the last market cycle. And the general notion is with market cycles, typically the junk rallies last. And if you are looking at these coins as maybe not the most altruistic or formidable coins, we'll call them. Yes, I choose my words carefully here, because you know that the armies of all these coins, all the fanboys are going to get very mad at that sort of a thing. But you typically do see that rally last. Anyways, and not necessarily saying that this is like the end of the end for Bitcoin right now. Obviously, there's still very many. There's a lot more long-term analysis things to be looking at. Of course, my long-term analysis video that I uploaded about a couple weeks ago now, still very much relevant. And technically speaking, none of the long-term top identification signals have been fired off just yet. Like none of them out of all like the, I don't know, I think we listed like around 10 or so maybe. Anyways, they are pretty fucking close, so I would say. Top 10 worst coins, however. MCO getting beat up, PundyX getting beat up, BitTorrent getting beat up after giving up yesterday's gains almost as quick as it got him, and Sidecoin on that list as well. So we're seeing rotations between the top 10 best and the top 10 worst, of course. Anyways, into the market data tab we go. See what we got going on over here, as I do still look at the funny rate as more or less a bullishly biased underlying market dynamic going on right here, alongside open interest, which is putting in higher lows as well. And this would still keep the more long-term rally hopes alive for Bitcoin. The general notion is that when Bitcoin, or any asset for this matter, is grinding around its prior all-time high, and for what it's worth, I don't really see too much interest in this at this exact moment right now. Yes, you know, it is rather hot, but overall I'm not seeing like crazy immediate interest in the same way that you do typically see on like these major highs. It doesn't necessarily have to be a macro high, but just these major highs, like what we saw at about 42,000, what we saw at about 58,000, and what we're actually not seeing right now, or at least that's what it would appear to me, perusing the crypto Twitter spheres and the crypto Reddits and all that good stuff, and even just regular mainstream media as well. There doesn't seem to be too much hype going around it at this exact moment, in the way that you would expect when something's like literally on the precipice of making new all-time highs. So I do think that that's rather interesting, and I do think that that does help out the bullish continuation case more long term. On top of that, what do we see over here? We do see that the global funding rate continues the downtrend, so I do like that overall. Again, leading around your prior all-time high. This is actually a little bit less of a sentiment indicator and more of a hard line base indicator, because how is this being based off of? Well, if you're looking at the funding rate for these exchanges, for these exchanges down here, assuming that they're peer-to-peer, which almost all of these guys are, what does that essentially imply? Well, as the funding rate goes down, it means that the differential between the perps and the index price for that exchange are more or less coming back into parity. And as they come back into parity, what does it essentially apply? Well, it essentially implies that people are not as gung-ho with buying up the perps, for example, putting those positions on futures, and instead they are, opting to, well, it's not necessarily that they're opting to, it's just that they're less, there's less arbitrage available between those two pairs. So with that in mind, we don't really have that same sort of dynamic that typically goes on around these critical places, like we saw back and over here, where a lot of people are just going to be arbing away the difference because, well, you can, and that's realistically how they keep those prices kind of anchored to the index. And by the way, if you're not familiar with these sort of things, you should definitely know this, because apparently a lot of people think that like the funny rate is like, what do they think it is? They think it's like, I don't know, the difference between longs and shorts on an asset. No, it's not at all, especially in a peer or specifically in a peer-to-peer context, which, I believe, I don't know if Binance actually is. BitMEX certainly is. Bybit certainly is. FTX certainly is. FTX does have a desk, I believe. Durbit is 100%. And I think all the other ones might have errors of that. So with that in mind, it's actually the differential, again, between the perpetual price and the index price. The index price is typically denoted by the exchange. It's usually going to be a combination of like, some of the bigger exchanges, typically bigger spot exchanges, that is. Typically going to be a combination of, like Bitstamp, Coinbase, and maybe Gemini, for example. Those are usually very popular to be using because they're, more or less established there. Sometimes a few more, sometimes a few less, but usually, some combination of those. Anyways, what that essentially implies is that people are, they're not necessarily gunning these things up on the futures contracts just yet, which is usually going to be more of an indication of sentiment, which in this case is coming back down, like I said, into parity, which suggests that the market is more or less kind of, I wouldn't say neutral, it's certainly not neutral here, but it doesn't necessarily give off those major red warning signals that you typically do see at those local highs, like we saw back and over here, once again, when, the global funding rate was 0.237%, and again in late January highs, right below that number, and then again in middle of February highs at about 0.15. So all of this has been downtrending for a while now, and I do look at that as more or less healthy on the whole. Again, giving a little bit more of a bullish bias here, but I do want to be very, very clear with this. At the end of the day, price action trumps all, and price action, if there are certain conditions that are met, I will turn around to being a very large bear, a very big bear. Anyways, with all of that said, do we have anything else that we want to talk about here? We actually still do see a pretty damn big premium over the futures, over spot price action over here. It's a little bit more, over perps essentially. It's a little bit more concerning, I suppose, but not a death sentence in and of itself. And but it should be denoted that we actually do see a greater discrepancy than what we saw on the February highs, just for what it's worth. Now, obviously not as bad as our mid-March highs, which is our current all-time high at about $62,000, but that is maybe the biggest concerning thing from the underlying market dynamics going on at this exact moment. Okay, so with that said, let's actually start off with some long-term analysis today. So let's go over here to our pie chart. Again, you can find this indicator on TradingView. Just type in like caretaker reverse pie top something rather. I believe I have a video on it where it shows you directly how to do it. Anyways, let's actually go into this a little bit more. So we've spoken about what the percentage means on this, and the percentage is essentially just calculating a differential between the reverse function on this, where these two moving averages will ultimately cross, and where current price action is. And we've identified that around about 80%, which right now we're about 84 and a half almost. That's where your bull market is really in like its last critical phase. Sometimes even the high is put in around that time as well. 75% is about like, no questions asked. This is happening, or throw all the fucking red flags, whatever analogy you want to use. This is very likely coming down and not, not perpetuating for much longer, or the high is quite literally already put in. So with that in mind, we are at about 84.5%, and we have been seeing it steadily come down about 1% almost every day now for the last week to week and a half. If you recall, just back on over here about a week and a half ago, it was in the lower 90s, I think around 93 to 92. It's completely dropped off the face of the cliff here. Now this is not that obviously makes sense because it's just measuring the differential between these two moving averages right here, obviously. So the more that Bitcoin kind of stalls at these levels, naturally the more that they're going to draw closer and closer together. So if Bitcoin is going to continue to rally here, and if we are running with this assumption that it is more or less going to operate as it has been historically, which we do have 3 or 4 iterations now, so I'd say that that's pretty damn good. Or at least good enough for me. And in this case, if Bitcoin fails to rally, probably within this next, I would say week, actually. And when I say rally, I mean like really fucking rally out of this area right here. That will inevitably hit that 80-ish marker. And typically speaking, sometimes we do get another continuation rally on top of that. I mean, we can measure out some of the differentials over here. I think this one was about 80%, or no, this one was about 75% before the last push to all-time highs about one day before. I'm curious where the 80% was actually, because that's what I'm looking at right now. Let's see, probably somewhere around here if I had to guess. Yeah, right around here. And that was, right around $17,000 before that next sort of push to your all-time high. In fact, this is looking rather similar as Bitcoin does consolidate at a high level here. We can go back to the past iteration before that, which would be right around here. And let's see where that number exactly came in. I'm just going to kind of guess, and let's see. Okay, that's about 90% right there. Okay, well, that's way the fuck above. Let's take this one right here. Still a little bit before we actually officially get the cross. And you can see that even that actually changed it by 10%. So it's extremely, extremely fickle here. So it's going to be a little bit before that, perhaps, maybe right around here. Yep, this one calls the high, or sorry, we get around the 80% region about 2 days before the actual high is put in. And I imagine the same thing happens back on over here too. Let's just, double check. Yep, about 80% right here. And that was about 3-4 days before the actual high is put in. So I do think that that's rather interesting right now. By the way, short-term timeframes, yes, they are bearish. I'll just spoil the surprise right there. Probably looking for a move down to like $56,000. Seeing Bitcoin actually just crawl its way down there right now. Oh, and by the way, I've actually made a small change. I'm curious if anyone has a strong opinion about it. But I've actually, if you've noticed, gotten rid of the time frame above, because I figure you can see it elsewhere and it just gives us more screen real estate. Let me know if that just looks absolutely awful to you or not. But I figure, well, why not, man? More screen real estate is good. Anyways, what I want to do now is I want to take this a step further. Something that we haven't really spoken about here. Brought up by someone in the Discord. Let me see if I can go find out or reference exactly who it was. Was it Shibley? Who exactly was this? Or was it Mr. Bread and Blocks? These guys are always calling out some pretty interesting stuff. No, it was Shibho. So credit to him on this one. Or was it? Hold on. Who was this? Who are you? Reveal yourself, sir. Well, I'm sure they'll reveal themselves, but I do want to give them credit because I do, this is one of the, one of the highlights of having a community. People offer their different perspectives on these things. So another way of kind of doing this would be measuring quite literally the differential between these two moving averages down here, which makes obvious sense. As soon as they get to a critical number, which we're about to show, usually Bitcoin's kind of in the last death throes of its rally. And right now, well, actually, instead of right now, let's just go back over here. Let's just go see it historically first. I want to be presenting the information, and then you make the decision for yourself. You're an adult, of course, or most likely an adult, so you are more than capable of figuring this out. So we can see that these two moving averages, obviously they are going to be pretty damn bifurcated on these mega rallies, obviously. But as the rally comes closer and closer to its fruition, the ending segment of it, they draw closer and closer, obviously. I mean, that is essentially what we're measuring right here. Anyways, I just want to point out this guy right here. This was about 6.25%, and this was continuation. So that was about 6%. Doesn't look like all that much, but just keep that in your mind as a little bit of a baseline. Anyways, we can come over here, and this is where the rally really starts to, it starts to accelerate even more crazily, yes, but it was pretty much it was pretty much, all but done after this sort of segment right here. I'd say that's about 4%. Now, again, Bitcoin did inevitably rally about 2x from that level. But around this point, you can see that it never diverges, these moving averages never diverge away from each other without, Bitcoin putting the top a little bit later after that. So it's kind of like a last warning signal, essentially. Again, Bitcoin quite literally does rally about 2x from this level. This was about $11,500 right here. Obviously, the high was right below $20,000. About a few days later as well. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, about a week and a half later. So fair enough. Anyways, let's go back in time and see what the other ones have done and see if there's any sort of, rhyme or reason with this. Okay, we go back to 2014 right here, and what do we see? Well, well, I'm just gonna measure this one out just out of curiosity. That's about 660%. But if we go right here, let's see how much this one is. That's about 5%, getting closer. Okay, let's like really zoom in here. I want to really be super exact with this one. Right around here, we hit that 4 marker. Yeah, and that 4 marker, as you can see, is literally right here. That one was about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days before the ultimate high. But not all that much higher, to be fair. This one about the same price, to be quite exact. In fact, right around about 1100, a little bit above 1100 right there. But again, that 4% region is like, okay, party's over. Yes, there's there's likely one more push here, but for now, it does look, it's warning time, essentially. Anyways, going back to the iteration before that, in 2013, we have this one right here. Obviously, this one converges on itself pretty damn rapidly. You can see just about a couple months before the end of the rally, about 8.5%, and then right around here on that last continuation drive, what do we see? 4.5% right fucking here. Now, again, this one does rally, rather significantly from that level. I'm talking about this was about a $95 high to our ultimate high of almost $300 actually, 225, 230. So yes, we're getting into fucking crazy parabolic times, but that next mega rally is that's game over, essentially, at least for the next half year or so, as it does go back down and reaccumulates. Anyways, we can probably get one more iteration if we go to BLX index on top of that, but you kind of get where I'm going with this, and I don't think that we need to do much more than that. Anyway, so we'll go to the current trajectory of Bitcoin, right? And let's just see, where are we in the differential between these two moving averages? And let's kind of measure that up historically. So we can see this one right here, about 2.5%. About 2.5%, actually. That is certainly below the 4.5% threshold that we've been kind of populating right there. So what does that imply? Historically speaking, the next sort of run on Bitcoin, assuming that it has a next run on Bitcoin, is very likely to lead to that parabolic blow off top. And, on the upper end, we've seen about a little bit more than a 2x from that level 2 times. One time we've seen about 0%, actually, not any different. So I'm just curious here. What would it look like if Bitcoin did rally up about 2x from its current level? Well, you can probably already do this one mentally, as it's just 2x times 57, and that'd put us in the like 100 low 100 teens. But let's see. Let's see what happens if we add 100% to this. Well, yep, as predicted, round about $115,000. That's a very interesting number now, isn't it? Isn't it, right? Because we've actually seen this come up several times. If you recall the long-term macro analysis that I believe we did on BLX index way the fuck back on over here. Let me get this one ready, and again, keep that number in the back of your mind's eye as we will go. Or do we want to do it like this? We can do it like this. Anyways, this level over here actually crawls all the way up to about 110,000 or 100. About 110,000 over the next few months. So what are we, March? So we're basically getting near the end of March right now. So April, May, June, July. And this would be like June area right here, to be fair. Then again, though, that would be drawn on for a little bit longer. Anyways, where exactly was I going with this? Yes, that's right. Where was I going with this? Jesus Christ, man, I've lost my my train of thought now. That's quite the bitch here. God damn it. Okay. Where exactly was it? Okay, yes, we've spoken about, the next potential major low for this market cycle, based off the 4 spot 236, based off of the last prior accumulation phase. In this case, that would actually still be above where Bitcoin is right now at about 70 or about 60 to 70,000 bucks. Very interesting right there. That also does line up with the quarterly that we're looking at the end of this month. So with that in mind, where was I getting that number from? Oh man, I need to go back to my macro video and actually pull that one back up. Unfortunately, I don't have it in the back of my mind's eye right now. Is there anything here that I was looking at specifically? No. Yeah, unfortunately, no. So yeah, I'm actually not be able to get. I'm actually not be able to generate that. However, I do specifically remember 110 to 120 coming up several times actually in the last in the last one. I believe it. Oh yes, okay. Well, here's one of the ways. Although this is probably the least impressive way in my opinion. And it would be this. Let's get rid of everything right here. Do I have all the trend lines on? No, I do not have the trend lines on. Where did I do this on? Did I do it on this chart here? Nope, didn't do it on this one. So let's go over here. I'm sure it's on this one. Yes, indeed it is. Okay, beautiful. All right, so we'll do it on this chart. And again, reference that video if you do want the full explanation of this. Anyways, anytime that we have seen Bitcoin close on a new weekly all-time high, after, well, obviously having a bit of a reversal here, we have seen a very specific sort of interplay with the next like macro push, essentially. We can start off with this one going all the way back to July 2010, of course, and Bitcoin then closes on a new all-time high about a few months later in October, and zoom, about 450% to the upside. To a high of about $0.50, by the way. Anyways, same thing. Bitcoin reversed for a little bit, then closed on new all-time highs right here, and then big move up to about 230% to the next all-time high. A little bit on the lower end, as you'll probably see, but worth mentioning, of course. Then reversal for a couple months right here, closed on new all-time highs, and off to the races once again, almost 3,000%. Fucking impressive. And then we have about a 4 or 5 month long reversal, it looks like, plus new closure on new all-time highs right here, and off to the races. 1,200, a little bit over, or a little bit under 1,300%, it looks like. Then about a 3 month long reversal there before further continuation on new all-time highs. And what do we have? About a 600% gainer before the next major long-term down for about a year in this case, leading into the 2017 rally. And this one was another almost 2,000% rally. So you can kind of come up with a range of this. On the lower end, we've seen an outlier of about 230% to the upside, which, by the way, Bitcoin's pretty much already done right here. And on the upper end, we've seen about 3,000%. Let's just kind of take an average of that and put it somewhere in like the early 1,000s. What would that look like based off of Bitcoin's breakout right here, just out of curiosity? Well, first off, we need to lower this because we need more upside space, I believe. Anyways, putting it even in the 500% region would actually hit that $115,000 number, which, as you have seen, that would actually still be somewhat a little bit more on the lower end. We saw two or three iterations where that was at 230%, somewhere in the 400s, and then somewhere in the 600s, right? And then we saw some crazy outliers like 1,300%, 2,000%, 3,000%. So if we just kind of take an average of that, actually, well, it would certainly be higher than this, but still 500% would put us in that $115,000 region. Now, playing around with numbers a little bit more on the higher end, what would about 1,000% look like? Just out of curiosity. Well, about $250,000, which is rather interesting here, of course. And that would be like more in the middle. So would it still be relevant to be looking at? Potentially, yes, because remember, this last push that we typically see born off of that signal on the pi cycle top indicator does kind of correlate with that, obviously. What about the Bitcoin investor tool? Maybe it was this one. It's the one that I was looking at. All right, let's see. Was it this one? No, it was not this one, but this one's actually interesting as well. So the Bitcoin investor tool, I believe I brought it out like a week ago. I want to give credit to Mr. Dr. Danger for bringing it up to me because I actually kind of shot it down the first time that I saw it, just based off its name mostly. But that's stupid ego speaking, of course. More importantly here, we actually do see something that's somewhat interesting, of course. Anytime that Bitcoin has gotten above this red line, that's been the end of your parabolic blow off top. And just out of curiosity, what have the past iterations been looking like on this? Well, on this one over here, you can see that once it starts accelerating, we're talking about a 300% move to the upside. Once this one really starts accelerating right here, about 250%. Well, I imagine if we actually start this from the last major low, yep, about 300% as well to the next high. And then this one over here starts trending above the top side. And what do we see about, actually this one, hold on, let's get this exactly right. Okay, this one showing about 126%. So it does lessen a little bit over time. Again, 3 iterations, not a whole hell of a lot, but just out of curiosity, what would that look like over here? Playing around with these numbers once again. Well, 100% would actually put Bitcoin about 130,000. So kind of within the ballpark there. Although at those levels, it just becomes so fucking crazy that like what what does that even mean? What does that even mean, man? If we were to put like 300% on that, which is certainly more in line or with some of the greater iterations, we're talking about that $250,000 area once again. So while I do think Bitcoin is kind of entering into like the last phase of this parabolic blow off top, this last phase can actually really go on for quite some time, historically speaking. Now, of course, when we're thinking about these sorts of things, it's not like a hard and fast rule. We obviously overestimate the role of randomness in in indications like this. But more importantly, with that, we can come up with an actual actual areas of interest and actual areas to suggest that is not going to happen anymore. And that's what actually defines a good trading plan. Again, referencing that concept from Nassim Taleb's book that I was bringing up a lot yesterday and the day prior, which has been on my mind a lot because I reread like really important the books that I think are the most important. I reread every year, and that's one of them. Fooled by Randomness, of course. And in this case right here, it's not necessarily that, I'd be willing to say that that's 100% going to happen. No, it's just I can run with that assumption because there are other things that will let me know within price action if that is not going to work out. Of course, we need to have essentially risk management for these sorts of things. And in this case, where would that be? Where do things naturally start to lose their luster? Well, in this case, if we're looking at a weekly, any sort of a weekly reversal would certainly put a damper on that case as well. Anytime that we have seen a weekly reversal, that is, end of rally. That is the end of your bull market every fucking time, every goddamn time. If you want the easiest way to call the top, you're not going to call the actual top, but you'll call the momentous drive below. Look for the weekly reversal. The weekly lower high has been a foolproof way of getting it since the history of Bitcoin, the dawn of Bitcoin, every fucking time, every goddamn time on the weekly. So fair enough on that one. And are we doing that right now? No, we're not. In fact, this is, quite literally closing or potentially going to close or already closed on a higher high last week. So we quite literally can't even have a lower high this week to begin with. And more importantly, CME already closed on a higher high. And I imagine that does greatly influence spot price action here. So with all of that in mind, I do think that, Bitcoin likely has another push to the upside. And this push can really come at like extreme numbers. But if we're going to go down to a lower term time frame, where would this also start to kind of fall apart? Because I would like to have an area of interest for that as well. And we can actually have it right here. Basically at your last sort of daily, daily major low. Obviously, this is not your major low at about 55,500, although it does matter for medium term time frames, but about 45,000 bucks right here. So that would kind of be my area for that. Bitcoin below 45,000 bucks, which by the way, would be taking out the last weekly low. Then I would be very willing to call a party over. Bitcoin probably in for another one of those mega downsides for a prolonged period of time. Do I think that that's what's happening right here? No, not necessarily. Of course, we can also apply this to the Bollinger Bands, which I have been putting a lot of emphasis on during these trending moves. And as it stands right now, maybe not go to the bi-monthly. We don't really need that right now. But the monthly right here, as long as we're trending above the top side Toronto band, I'm really hesitant to call any sort of like end towards this move as well. And just for reference, do we have any sort of interplay with this? We don't really have too many iterations here, but I'm just curious what this actually does look like, because I actually haven't done this. It was 13. That was elite leap up, 1,337%. This one over here getting about 500%. All right, so we're not really seeing anything that's too great on that. And this one over here about 1,500%, kind of similar to the other one. You can maybe come up with a range about 1,000%. Anyways, we've already done the 1,000% based off, or actually no, we have not done 1,000% based off this area right here. I'm curious what that would actually print, but we did close above the top side Toronto band right here, to be fair. So 1,000% actually would put Bitcoin where? Low, in those higher hundreds, actually, you get 125,000 bucks, but those numbers do change around quite significantly. You can see that though, things can get pretty damn accelerated here. On top of that, we got the quarterly, which is also trending above the top side Toronto band, and is going to have a chance to close above it for the second consecutive closure at the end of this month, in fact, which is coming in. How many days are in March? 1 day. So 10 more days, 10 more trading days left, and then that will actually be confirmed. And this more or less likely does insinuate continuation here too, especially as long as Bitcoin closes this next quarterly above anywhere above 50,000 bucks would do it for me. But even above like 45,000 bucks, I think is completely fine long term. Anyways, with that said, am I still bullish here? Yes, long term I am still bullish. Short term, however, let's go look at this one right here. Bitcoin does more or less look like it's pointing out a short term range once again. Do we even test the bottom side of that range just yet? Nah, not quite. Do you still think that there could be another wick lower, maybe somewhere just below 56,000 bucks towards 55.5 to 56,000 bucks? Of course, that's also going to be in line with the daily 21 exponential average as well, which I do like for a little bit of a bouncy bounce. If Bitcoin does get there, actually a little bit lower than that. About 55.5, we could say, especially on today's closure, probably gonna be somewhere right around there. Anyways, my point is that lower term timeframes still ranging, still sideways, still a little bit of downside. We tested the top side of the range yesterday. What typically happens after you test the top side, you're gonna go test the bottom side. Is it still wedging itself into what would be considered an ascending triangle? Yeah, I would say so. Yes, as long as Bitcoin's above 54,500, that is very much viable. Or on a daily, or that's on a 4 hour, or on a daily closure about 55,500. As long as those two conditions are met. Of course, daily is going to hold more weight. I do look at this as essentially a reaccumulation formation, just boring the shit out of people as Bitcoin does prepare for the next mega macro move, if you will. As it stands right now, though, lower term timeframes are a little bit more downside imposed. We do see 4 hour Stokes nosediving outside of the bullish control zone. 3 hour Stokes certainly already there, although I should mention that we do have this trend line coming in here. A little bit lower, though. It would imply that we still have, at least I don't know, 3 ticks maybe until we actually hit that trend line. So a little bit later today, maybe around the time that CME is open, you might actually see a bit of bit of activity around there. Bi-hourly, what are we seeing? Already crashing down below. So they're all angled to the downside thus far, and hourly's kind of flip-flopping around as you would expect. So what does that equate to? Probably a little bit of an hourly pop back up, maybe tries to test back up towards 58,000 bucks, but lower term timeframes, medium term timeframes likely do test somewhere around this region right here. But again, that doesn't really change structure at all, and this is really only relevant for like very short term timeframes. Of which, am I trading this myself? Absolutely fucking not. So full transparency, no. I'm more interested in the long term moves here on Bitcoin, because I do believe that it's very likely setting up, and the areas for kind of denoting these sorts of things is very well documented. If you go back on over here to the daily and run with that assumption, I'd still be looking at 55,500. I mean, that is obviously is your last little higher low right here, also in line with the 21 exponential average. So I'd be looking at this as a nice little pivot on price action, meaning that as long as Bitcoin is closing dailies above there, or as long as Bitcoin is closing 4 hour dildos above 54, what exactly is this level? 54,500 especially, then I am looking at this with bullish goggles essentially, albeit with a range short term, which probably does imply a little bit of downside testing. Now, with that said, if Bitcoin breaks one of those two things, preferably I'd like to see it on a daily. Obviously, I'd be looking for a relatively quick move down to about 51,500 bucks. Still, the blue box of peace and prosperity is very much relevant. Or actually, no, I took it away. I moved it up to the next level, but it'd be this area right here, right around the 2 spot extension, about 51,500. I'd be looking for a move down there. Very likely a bounce over there too. And then would it imply continuation lower? Probably yes. Wherever the 55 comes in at that time, probably does get a little bit of a pity bounce and then moves its way down there. And again, if you compare that to the macro, is that taking out any sort of the major structures on the higher term timeframes? No, that's still 45,000 bucks to be fair. So with all of that said, I mean, Bitcoin could play out this sideways range a little bit longer, but the problem is that as Bitcoin does that longer and longer and longer, naturally speaking, the pi cycle top indicator is going to draw closer and closer, as we've seen. It's not even as I said, it's as we've seen. I mean, this is just the fucking data right here. As these draw closer and closer, as days go on and Bitcoin essentially fails to move outside of this range, we've seen it, come down about a 0.5% to a full percent each and every day for the last week and a half. So it is moving pretty fucking aggressively here. And that implies that if Bitcoin fails to move relatively soon, we will inevitably see that cross. And well, that's at the point that would be one of the major warning signals for myself, maybe even good enough to get out of this market more or less. Although we have seen, new highs printed after that, it's critical warning time, essentially. It's critical warning time. It's time to be looking for a top, probably within the next week, historically speaking, we typically do see. Anyways, all of that considered, do I remain bullish here? Probably yes. I mean, we saw something very similar, we're seeing something very similar right now to what we saw in 2017 as well. I'm sure that a lot of the pattern traders are going to be calling this one out. And to be fair, I mean, they are correct in this. A lot of people looking at probably a rising wedge. Now, I fucking hate wedges. I'm not even the biggest pattern trader to begin with. I think triangles are good for Bitcoin specifically. But wedges, in my experience, are usually pretty dog shit. In this case right here, we actually did see a rising wedge, which I read in my TA books that's supposed to break to the downside. Well, actually, when you're trading a macro bullish market, it has a very, 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 very low hit rate, literally below 30%. So probably not the best one to be looking at. Anyways, in this case right here, we do see that I always get this question too. But if Krown, but if it has a 30% hit rate, doesn't that mean we could just assume that it's going to break the other way 70% of the time? No, it's a nothing 70% of the time. It's not fucking black or white. This is what people do not understand about trading and technical analysis. It's not black or white. There's more randomness that goes on than what we probably consider. I mean, anyways, we'll get into chaos theory later. So looking at this right here, yes, we did see something very similar to this. Technically a rising wedge that broke to the upside. And that's really when Bitcoin did go like phenomenally parabolic. I mean, that is your breakout from about, what is it? 9,000? Yeah, basically 9,000 all the way to the next all-time high, 120% gainer right there. Do we see something similar in the prior bull markets? Not really, no. Not really, no. But we do have something very similar going on right here too. If you are looking at this as a rise in which you're technically right as far as the shape goes and even the volume signature, I mean, technically that is right. But like I said, these are notoriously just shaky and shitty patterns. And in this case right here, it actually would be testing the bottom side of it, to be fair, right now. But with that in mind, I don't look at this as really playable. And more importantly, if it does break to the upside, I actually would be looking for the next parabolic move, which, if we were to take 100% gainer from that area, I mean, that's, around the $6,000 level, you can already do it in your head, about $120,000. So again, seeing it come up multiple times here, as an area of interest, if Bitcoin does enter into this next parabolic phase. So, to kind of answer the question, do I think Bitcoin can go to 1 million or 10 million or 5 million or whatever fucking crazy numbers that people are suggesting right now? I think 100,000 is crazy enough, to be honest with you. No, I don't think so in this cycle. Extremely unlikely. Historically speaking, extremely unlikely. Of course, weird things do happen in trading land, but if we're using this as our baseline, extremely unlikely is what I'd say. So I do want to be on record as saying that, because I know that there's a lot of people out there saying like Bitcoin's on the road to 1 million. Well, probably not. Or if it is, then that more or less likely assumes that something's gone terribly wrong with like the dollar, for example, which, to be fair, right now, as we've been speaking about for the last like fucking 4 to 5 months here, what's the dollar doing? It's actually putting in a reversal to the upside, by the way, which will put downside pressure on price action for anything that trades against the dollar. Bitcoin trades against the dollar. Most major assets trade against the dollar. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to go down. We've seen several times where they've actually rallied together. This would be a big one right here. This one would be a big one right here. All during times of mega rallies for Bitcoin. Actually, less so on this one right here. Bitcoin was in a downtrend over here, but certainly this one right here, from 2014 all the way to 2016, 2017 almost. Bitcoin was in a mega rally, putting in lows at the same time about. So with that in mind, I do look at this as a little bit problematic. Yes, a bit of a warning signal. Yes, but can they go together? Yes, they can go together. But once this really starts going, and especially once it gets like a monthly reversal, for example, which is still not really happening for a little bit of time until it gets back above about $94, I wouldn't necessarily look at that as like, super critical just yet. Anyways, going back on a Bitcoin over here, I'm just flip-flopping around everywhere we go. See what the 12-hour looks like. 12-hour Joule is actually a little bit concerning here. Could line up for a sell signal, getting close there, but our autocorrelation says that's probably not the best idea to be looking at right now. Looking at, I feel like there's something else to be looking at too. Maybe the 4-hour. Is 4-hour doing anything? No, not really. But all lower term momentum oscillators are naturally coming down right now, as we already discussed. HVP has already come off the fucking cliff here too, but I'm looking for this to... No, actually, I don't look at this as anything. We don't see anything too obvious here. We just see that it's really, really low. So we are probably looking at a move. I'd say within this next 36-hour session, very, very likely, probably even within this next day, 24-hour session. Anyways, going on the 12-hour right here, could see a rejection of the bullish control zone. That'd be another damn good indication that actually would be looking for this one to test a little bit further down, somewhere around like $55,500 to $56,000. Anywhere in that pocket there would look about right to me. But at the same point, if you do see any sort of a starter step here, where it initially has a little bit of a hint of a cross to the downside and then crosses the upside in the bullish control zone, those are usually very, 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 very powerful continuation signals. And in this case, I'd be looking for moves back up to the top side of the range, 60,000 and beyond. Anyways, moving on to the daily, do we see anything of note here? Yeah, daily soaks are going to have a chance to cross back on to the upside in the bullish control zone, but I need to see that confirmed first, and we still got another 17 hours, 10 hours, 10 minutes and 15 seconds left in the trading day. So a lot can happen between now and then, but certainly a potential Bitcoin closes basically anywhere here or higher. I'd say above 58,000 bucks would look pretty damn good. What about the buy daily and the 3-day? 3-day, I mean, basically unchanged here. 3-day, same thing, although 3-day is a little bit, well, could line up. It could line up, but still not quite there. What about CMEs? Did they actually? Yeah, and this is exactly what I was afraid CME, well, not necessarily afraid, but this is exactly what I thought CMEs might do, and this is why I did not believe that this was going to be a signal that played out. You want to see this turn down aggressively alongside all of them turning down. We don't see that right here. Now, it is lining up. It is certainly lining up, but I figure it likely has another push through first. Remember, we still do have that hidden bullish divergence on the weekly over here, which, personally speaking, this is not played out in my mind. Well, I mean, we did see a nice move off this, to be fair. We did get a new move to new all-time highs, but usually when you see something like this, hidden bullish divergence, when you're already at your prior all-time high, it's going to lead into into a blue sky breakout. And in this case, I mean, we are kind of in a blue sky breakout from a weekly perspective, but because it is a weekly, it operates on a 7-day schedule, and probably still takes another couple weeks to play out. Of course, should also denote the biweekly as well, which is trending, which is just continuation here for what it's worth. And we do see that if we go to the biweekly over here, it is trending above the topside trend band for multiple weeks in a row now. So I do look at this as trend in motion, very likely to print new all-time highs within the next 2 weeks, probably. Or by the way, are we closing this one today? No, we're not. Oh, wow, we're not. Okay, so that could actually maybe take like 2 to 3 weeks, perhaps. Anyways, with that in mind, is there anything else that we want to be checking out today? How long is 40 minutes? What the fuck, man? Holy shit, this one's definitely for the TA nerds today. God damn. Is there anything that we want to check out here? Gold still playing out a reversal. Nice. Hey, I see Bitcoin at 61,000 bucks, but that's futures. Anyways, do you want to check out Mr. Bureau really quick? Mr. Bureau is going to do whatever the fuck Bitcoin does for the most part. I'm not really bearish on anything that looks like this. Still looking like continuation to me on the bi-weekly. What about the weekly? Same thing. Same fucking thing, man. If I had to call it right now, I think that Bitcoin likely has another push to the upside before playing out this next mega down. But we are getting close, to be fair. We are getting pretty damn close. What would be the natural areas on Ethereum? Still, well, what the fuck? Hold on, that doesn't make sense. That's because we made it on daily, and the daily is like right in line with the 21. I'd still be using the 21 as a bit of a pivot here, very similar to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin breaks the 21, I'd be looking for another markdown somewhere around the 55, wicks down, maybe closures above 1675 region. Long term though, still like it. Still think deep 2,000 bucks is kind of where I'd be looking for. This one does want to have another push, but I'd be very, 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 very careful within that region, of course. Anyways, have we beat this horse to death? I think that we have. I think that I've probably chewed your ear off by now. I'm curious what caretaker rangers are saying right now. He's actually saying that we might even have a potential low on our short-term timeframes that is right now. And hello to our new friend. But more importantly, right here, with HVP incredibly low, I'd be looking for a resolution of this range probably within this next 24 hours. So I do think that we're getting a move very, very soon here. And with 4-hour HVP like this, that move definitely will have enough juice to break this range. So again, to the downside, on a 4-hour below 54.5 or a daily below 55.5, so about $1,000 delta between the two. To the upside, a little bit easier here, and it's just natural to have a bullish bias in a straight up market. 4-hour closure above 59.6, same areas yesterday, or a daily above where? Or even just a wick above yesterday's high at about 60,000 bucks. That'll do it for me as well. And then yes, I'd be looking at the next major area about 65,000 bucks. And oh, look at that, caretaker's actually starting to agree with me at about the $69,000 target as well to the upside on that continuation drive. Probably not all on the same day, to be fair, although that has become a meme whenever I say that. Typically does happen, but you can see right here, based off this as a reaccumulation formation, I'd be looking at this as a cup and handle. We actually would have the measure move right at that $69,000 region, which is the 3.618, and then the short term, what would be ascending triangle right here would actually have a measure move right around where? 65,000 bucks. So actually naturally line up with both those targets on caretaker's higher term time frame ranges there. So I actually really do like that. Good confluence, typically good, and in the areas again very well documented here. So with all of that said, I think I will shut off the video here. And we don't really need to wrap things up because I mean things are mostly the same on the short term, medium term time frames yesterday and the day prior, and the day prior than that. It's all about the macro right here. I think that's the more interesting thing. So with that said, I would like to wish you the best and the happiest. Again, a quick little reminder that if you are the type of person who's interested in any one of these programs, this is the last day or less than a day, 17 hours and 5 minutes, and then never again will there be a discount until the next major holiday or something like that. Anyways, with that said, wish you well, salute you, take care, and until next time.